The end of chapter 13. Star raised her head and called to Aloud and Giller. Aloud did not hear. She had her arms around Dawn's new calf, comforting it as it trembled in the sound of the dragon. And Giller, deep shadows under her red-rimmed eyes, was standing rigidly between Alan and Marley. She heard nothing but the thundering sound high above them on the mountain, saw nothing but the flashing fire that lit the sky above the cloud. Val and Ellis stood silently by. With them were Brondon and every other member of the village. All had come running when they heard the sound. Now they stood looking up, their faces masks of dread and fear. None of them paid attention to Star's call. Star moved away from the empty drinking pool and began to walk upstream, along the dry streambed. She did not know why she was drawn this way, only she knew that she must go, and quickly. A fence blocked her way. She nudged it aside with her shoulder, trampled over it without a glance, and moved on. She heard Giller's shout behind her and other voices, but she did not look back. The silent call was stronger now. She broke into a lumbering run. "Star, what is it?" They were chasing her. She could hear Giller's sobbing voice and the sounds of many feet. She ran faster. The streambed gaped brown and empty beside her. Earth, grass, and flowers scattered beneath her hooves. The mill was ahead on the other side, the tall stone mill with its huge wooden wheel that had stood silent for so many days. And yet, Star's ears pricked. There was a sound, a crackling sound, and a rippling, rushing sound. Water. Her parched throat ached for water. But there was another sound, too, a voice she knew. "Star! Star! Star!" Star answered the call. She plunged into the dry streambed. She thundered to the place where the sound came from, the mill channel up ahead, where the great wheel creaked and strained. Sweet water! Her nostrils were full of the smell of it now, for the water was coming in a wave that rose higher and higher every second, tumbling between the banks of the stream, pushing at the mill wheel's wooden paddles, pouring through it and past it down to Rin. Star met and breasted the wave head-on. She tossed her head and heaved herself through the foam, ignoring the sticks and rocks that beat against her legs, ignoring the urge to stop and fill her parched mouth. She forced her way across the earth bank to the mill channel that lay beside the stream. With a groan of love, relief, and pleasure, she reached the mill wheel and thrust her muzzle into the reaching hand of the boy who clung there. She dipped her head to take the burden he guided onto her broad back, and felt clutching hands on her mane. Slowly and carefully she waded into the foaming stream and threw it to the opposite bank, not looking back as the great wheel finally gave way to the pressure of the water and began to turn, crushing the branches and sticks caught between its blades. She clambered from the water. She felt Rowan's hands gripping her wool as he stumbled beside her, heard Rowan's voice in her ear. He was talking to her, as he always had done, and he was talking to the man lying on her back, telling them both, "It is all right. We are safe. We are home." Rowan threaded his fingers more tightly through Star's soft, damp coat. "Home," he said again, tasting the word on his tongue. His mind whirled. Everything had happened so quickly. Their journey from Rin to the dragon's lair had taken long days and nights. Their return, that terrifying downward slide through the underground stream, had taken minutes. It seemed unbelievable that he was here, safe in the valley, with the grass beneath his feet and the morning breeze in his face. He screwed his eyes shut, suddenly afraid that this was a dream and that he was still on the mountaintop with the fire, the ice, the terror and despair. But when he opened them again, the green fields of Rin were still there, and Star, and the stream bubbling beside him. It was true. They were home. They were safe. The water had come back to Rin, and they had come with it. "Rowan! Rowan!" a cry shrilled in the distance. Rowan looked up. A figure was running toward them, along the stream bank. It was Giller, calling to him, her arms spread wide. Aloud ran a little behind her, and far behind them both surged a crowd. It seemed as if the whole village was there, racing toward him. As the people drew closer, Rowan could hear that they were cheering, shouting, laughing with joy. But his eyes were swimming, and he could not see their faces clearly. He could only see Giller's as she reached him at last, swept him into her arms, and hugged him as though she would never let him go. Rowan clung to her, listening to the words she crooned to him over and over again. feeling her overwhelming relief and thankfulness for the return of the child she thought she had lost, and her love, which at last he understood. And in that moment, the cold, old ache in his heart melted away like snow before the fire, leaving no trace behind. Together they lifted John from Star's back and knelt beside him. "I think his leg is broken," said Rowan in a low voice. "He is in pain, but he is alive." John's eyes opened, and he looked up at the two worried faces bending over him. So unalike, yet so alike. He tried to say something, struggled to rise, then fell back with a groan. "John, lie still," begged Giller. "Do not try to speak. There is no need." The injured man wet his cracked lips with his tongue. "There is a need," he said. Rowan could see that every word was an effort for him, but he was determined to continue. "There is something I must tell you, Giller. I promised that I would bring your son home to you. But it is Rowan who has brought me home. He made me go on when I would have gladly fallen and died. He fought cold and fire for me when he could have saved himself. He faced the dragon alone." Rowan crouched on the grass, one hand in Giller's, the other resting on John's chest. He had not heard the crowd gathering behind him. He did not see the looks of wonder on their faces as they listened to John's words. But John saw. With a great effort, he raised his voice. "It is thanks to Rowan that the stream flows again," he said. "He never gave up. He would not give up. The smallest and weakest among us proved the strongest and bravest in the end. Rin owes him a great debt." There was silence. A tiny bird chirped in a nearby tree, and then a tremendous sound rose up. Rowan spun around, startled. He saw cheering people all around him. There were Allen and Marley, their faces streaked with mud, shouting and laughing and pounding each other on the back. There was Brondon, clapping her hands, and the Millers, Val and Ellis, staring at each other in amazement. There was Neil the potter, his mouth stretched into a vast grin, the people from the gardens, and Timon the teacher, and all the others. "Rowan! Rowan!" they were chanting. "Rowan of the Bookshaw! Rowan of Rin!" John smiled. "Skinny rabbit," he whispered, and, well satisfied, saw Rowan begin to laugh. Star rumbled to herself. Quietly she moved away and lumbered to the edge of the stream, filled now to the brim with clear, sweet, running water. She listened. Low, joyful bellows from the village reached her ears. The water had reached the Bookshaw pool. The herd was safe. Rowan was safe. The stream ran again. All was as it should be. Star lowered her head at last to drink.